Oh, Zephyr released an update 12 back in February 2014. I actually built her on the 15th of February of the same year, and she has always been a neglected frame. To be fair, it wasn't until the middle of 2017 I actually made a video about her minigame where it's basically Zappy Bird. To be fair, that was 3 years after it should have been actually brought out. Over 3 years before I should have done that, but everybody kind of knew it, and I did mention it in the update 12 thing and the what was it, 132, or the Let's Build episode 132, when I actually built Zephyr. She has been one of those frames that she's great when she first came out. She's used by actually a fair few people, but is classed as one of the least used and not really an important frame. So seeing her actually get changes in update 22.12 when they redid them all was quite nice. And for the record, this pink dot will be on her the whole time. The prime version of her, when she eventually comes, she will come, I will take that off, but since I personally don't use Zephyr that much anymore, I've just left it on there in case I need it in the future. But the big changes have basically come to her abilities. Was it Tailwind now costs half the amount of energy to cast it, free of casting while hovering. Of course, the ability to charge Tailwind while on the floor, and then it kind of creates like a vacuum underneath her and she just kind of levitates there. That is what they are referring to when they talk about hovering with her, because once you do this, you just kind of sit in the air, hovering. Weirdly, one of the features I'd never thought I would use on her that is actually pretty useful. Dive Bomb is now, it's weird, but basically, as far as I can tell, they combined the first ability, which was Tailwind, and Dive Bomb into just the one. Tailwind and Dive Bomb are the same ability, which is great because, let's be honest, Dive Bomb was never really used that much. Airburst is what replaced Dive Bomb. It generates a burst of massive dense air that explodes on contact and sends enemies flying. Ooh. Launching it into her fourth ability, Tornadoes, will help them grow as well. Kind of a really interesting ability, to be fair. They are subtle changes to a lot of the other frames, but completely changing her second from Dive Bomb to a completely another ability combining the other two, that was a huge change, and to be fair, a very welcome change, because as I mentioned before, Dive Bomb wasn't really used that much. Turbulence, of course, despite popular belief, is not exactly foolproof. As you can see, I am taking damage from enemies that are able to use AoE weaponry. Once that is gone, and you're not getting shot in the back, it's actually pretty effective at doing what it does best until it runs out. It's not recastable, sadly, but it does allow you to, I don't want to say take more, but it alters the flight path of projectiles, which means you are less likely to get hit. The only real change to this, it is still ridiculously useful as it has always been, but now it has, and this is the only change, a unique animation and sound. Apart from that, it works pretty much the same as it did before. From all the early release notes and everything else, the one thing I was looking forward to with this rework of her was Tornadoes now spawn where you are looking. Instead of them just randomly spawning or spawning on the closest enemies, it will now go where you are looking, and its default damage has been moved from magnetic to physical damage, so it's not just amazingly good against the corpus, it's now good against everything. Actually looking at it, I couldn't find anything that said shooting it will actually stop the elemental stuff going on it, so the fact that that's still here, is a good thing. The weird one I didn't actually see coming is you can steer the tornadoes by holding aim, right mouse button, or left trigger when this lands on consoles. That was actually, again, I just did not see it coming where you can actually steer the tornadoes. It was just completely weird. And it also says you can now recast tornadoes similar to Hydroid's tentacle swarm. Also good, because sometimes the tornadoes are off doing something where you don't want them and you couldn't put them where you needed them. Well, now you can, which is great. Of course, her passive is still the same. Her passive is basically, as soon as you jump, she acts completely different and way better than any of the other frames, because she falls slower, she's more controllable in the air, and great frame for parkour stuff. She really was, and still is. Of course, in hotfix 22.12.3, they did tweak her a little bit, where the energy cost of airburst was halved while in the air. They increased the projectile of airburst, and they also increased the tracking for tornado. We'll get onto that when we get to that stuff. And generally just cleaned her up a bit and made her work just a lot better than she was before that. This is one of the reasons this video is later than I would like to have done it, because I've been waiting for the little settlements to kind of settle in there and just make her not finalized, because this is all subject to change, but just tweaked a little bit. So all in all, I would have to say this rework to Zephyr, fingers crossed, this is because her prime is coming really soon. Maybe not the next one, but maybe the one after. I actually haven't looked into if they've actually said what the next prime is yet. So she could have been announced and I've no idea. She being whatever frame is actually next. I'm hoping Zephyr gets her prime soon, because these, with the added bonus of extra ability strength, or actually no prime apart from the dreaded Excalibur has actually had that, so it would be maybe ability duration. More than likely it's just either shields, armor, power, like capacity, just silly things like that, plus extra former on her. But she should still be quite a good prime frame, because her base frame is better now than she was before. And if I'm honest, the only big downside to her still remains. All of these changes have made her way better, but the biggest problem, of course, being where she is and how you acquire her. She is inside of the Tenno Lab, which is, of course, clan-based research, and the research costs for her can be a bit of a pain. The biggest pain has got to be when you actually come to build her. You don't need it for the actual Zephyr blueprint. The parts need Oxium. When she first came out, Oxium dropped one at a time. So as you can imagine, this was expensive. 500 and... would that be 550 or was that 520? Wait, that needed a 200? No, yeah, 200. 600 Oxium. Really? I could have sworn one of these was 150. It was 600 Oxium, and of course you then needed some to actually research the parts. Guaranteed pain. It still kind of is, because Oxium doesn't drop that much. It drops more now than it did when she first came out, but if you are aiming to build her and you haven't used her yet, Oxium farming is going to be the next long while of your life, because she is very heavy on that stuff. But to be fair, try and hide the pink spot. Try and hide the pink spot. Her rework actually made her way more impressive than she once was. Even though she was okay at the time, she is way, way better now. But anyway, we'll leave this off here for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch yous next time.